You are watching Issues at Hand on Church of Uganda Family TV. My name is Timohiro Bruno Edgard, and as always, you are welcome to Issues at Hand. That's proudly brought to you by Protea Hotel Entebbe, where you can get the best in relaxing amenities, but whole rooms as well for conferences and a lot in terms of hotel rooms for those of you who just want to relax and to cool off, especially by the lakeside. Please make a call. The number is on your screen. Make a reservation and booking today. Do not miss out on all the luxury and rest and splendor that is prevalent at Protea Hotel Entebbe. Now, on Issues at Hand today, I am joined by Mr. Julius Mukunda, who is the Executive Director of Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. And together we are going to talk about what should be the priorities for the 2023-2024 national budget. You are very welcome to Issues at Hand.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers and listeners of Family TV.
Indeed, it's a very good morning. Now, when it comes to the 2022-2023 national budget, if you look at some of the sectors and their allocations, 1.5 trillion Uganda shillings was allocated to agriculture, 4.3 trillion to works and transport, 418.9 billion to trade and industry, 124 billion to the ICT sector, 194.7 billion to tourism and hospitality, and of course the lion's share went once again to security, with now us focusing on what the 2023-2024 national budget would look like. Looking back, what was your takeaway from the national budget of 2022-2023? Did you think it was feasible? Did you agree with it? And how is its performance so far?
Again, good morning. Happy to be here. Yes, the government of Uganda, every year you have to produce a budget. But probably before I go there is that I work for the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, CSBAG, and our major work is following government money. We wake up in the morning, go back home in the evening, we just follow government money. So where does government get money from? And how does government spend that money? That is our major interest. So you will find us really, when the budget is ready, we are at the center of it. So the 2023-24 financial year budget, to most Ugandans might wonder, why are we even talking 2024? Because the government of Uganda budget cycle starts 1st July and ends 30th June of the other year. So it's in the middle of the year. Whereas most of us, our calendar years is January, December, but the government is 1st July and ends. So there are processes you have to do before you hit the clock. And among them, of course, is that we must debate the budget before the deadline. And so there is a process. So by 31st December, the National Budget Framework paper gets out, and their government shows, they are like proposals. This is what we intend to do. What do you think about it? They throw it to the public, they give it to Parliament, and Parliament looks at it. But then, by March, government must also now provide us with a consolidated draft budget, or saying this is where we are going. And this time government has come up and say we intend to spend 50 trillion Ugandan shillings. And they break it down. This is how it will go, like what we have done. And therefore we get interested. Okay, who is getting what? So the devil is in the details. Who is getting what? Who is losing out? Now, we look at the context in which we are as a country, and then we find ourselves and say, okay, what is it that we have? Now, what we have found out is that despite government good intentions to spend on the things we need as Ugandans, education, health, agriculture, water and sanitation, even infrastructure, we are finding that the government of late is getting constrained with the available sources for it to spend on us. In this way is that debt is becoming a problem. Now, the budget has increased from 45 trillion to 50 trillion. Now, you would imagine that that increase would definitely provide government more resources to spend on us. Unfortunately, is that despite the increase in the budget, the money available for us actually is going to reduce by almost 3.5 trillion, because that increment is specifically to deal with the debt issue. And that is the priority number one of government. I always tell people, your priority is where your money goes. You can't spend money on things you don't want. You will spend less, but the biggest things, you will put them there. So we have found out, for example, that interest payment is going to take a whopping 5 trillion Ugandan shillings. So if it is that, how much are you spending on agriculture? 1.5. So interest payment becomes a huge issue for government to first settle people's obligations. The second element, of course, is we have debts that we keep on rolling over. So you borrow money and pay the debt. But now you have borrowed, so you have another debt, a new debt.
So you borrowed to pay that debt.
Yes, so you dig a hole to fill a new one. That's how we talk about it. So debt is a big issue and the number one priority for government. Nothing else. The rest come later. So, but when you look at the budget, you want also to get into smaller details. For example, we have maintained $1 trillion Ugandan shilling for PDM, the parish development model. And for us, it is a game changer. It has challenges with implementation, like any other government program, because it is starting. But we believe that with the noise we have made, the attention we have given it, that government should be in a position to address these particular challenges of implementation. Because it started at a very high speed, we didn't prepare very well. In a government, there is a whole problem about lack of preparation. For us, when we think of a good idea, we jump on it and want to run with it, but we forget that there is need to prepare. For example, we still have circles stuck with money, and we never sent money for circles to sit on the money. We want to give circle money so that you get that money and give it to your beneficiaries, you give it out. But some circles are still stuck with the money because people are not prepared to fulfill the eligibility criteria to access money from the circles.
Is it because there was not enough research on the actual beneficiaries of
yes,
this?
I mean, people line up to get the money, but then you find that people actually don't even belong to that constituency. It's people from Kampala are the ones registering to go and pick money from the villages. So that lack of preparation, but we believe that this second year around, this is going to be third year actually, because the first year was also hush-hush, that everything is going to be streamlined and that people started receiving from their money. Now, it is up to us as civil society organizations, me and you as ordinary citizens of this country, now to follow that money. Who actually has received that money and what have they done using that money? So there is a whole trillion on parish development model. We also have, of course, agriculture has got money, 1.5 trillion. We believe that it could have even got double that. But in the wisdom of government, now they have even other projects that they are setting up. We appreciate that, but we think we really need to put more money in agriculture. Why? Because our biggest export in this country are agriculture based. You don't hear us that we are exporting cars, that we are exporting pens or serious manufactured goods. It's coffee, it's cotton, it's tea, it's maize, it's poultry, and all agriculture-related products. That's what we spend on. We export, which means that you need to invest where you get money from. And because if we export more, we get more foreign currency that can help us settle the debt obligations we have. Our current debt obligation portfolio is 86 trillion Ugandan shillings. Now, most people say, oh, this debt is huge, how shall we pay it? We are not going to pay it at a go. It's spread over 40 years. But it is the amount of money you have current to settle your current debt maturity, the debts that have matured. That is the problem. So for Uganda, for example, we have 3 levels. For us as civil society, we look at, we said there is a green level. If you have debt, you are at a low risk. You can easily pay it. there is a yellow level. That means that your risks have increased. You need to start. It's like a car has informed you that you see the dashboard lighting. It tells you that there is something wrong that you need to fix on your car. You can still drive the car, but you need to fix it. For example, if the indicator for fuel says, I'm up, it means you're on reserve. So please turn on the next petrol station and fuel your car. But the car is still moving. So we are in that situation of how do we turn the clock around before the car suddenly stops and doesn't move. And that's the default, which is red. So we don't want to be in red. So that's the budget I could briefly give you idea about of where government is spending priorities. So human capital development, which is composed of health and education, take the largest lion share of the budget, around 9 trillion.
Before we get to that, on the issue of debt, one of the biggest issues we have as far as the debt burden is concerned is domestic borrowing. Because what happens is that government borrows from banks in Uganda, many of which are foreign banks, and it means that government is borrowing from the same banks that an individual like you or me will borrow from, and that means that the interest rates from these banks are going to go high, which means it is not a fair competitive advantage for those of us who are who are not government but are getting loans from these banks. And what that transpires to is that you will see, if I start my business on a loan, I'll make sure the prices of my products are high because I have to recover that money for the loan. How are we going to, how is government, especially with this new proposed budget, going to enable the environment of domestic borrowing to go down? Because that's a very big issue.
So you are right that one of the biggest issues we have with our debt is domestic borrowing. And we have been engaging government on that. And specifically, to even simplify it better, is that government can't compete with private sector if it is its intention to have private sector grow. Because our motto here is that our economy is private sector driven. So we need these people to be able to do business, make profits, and we can be able to have economic growth. So when government borrows more money domestically, it means that there is little money remaining for private sector. And the principles of demand and supply now come in. When there is little money and there is more demand for that little money, the interest rates will definitely go up. When the interest go up, it means that the cost of you getting that capital becomes expensive. Therefore, your products are going to be expensive, and therefore they can't be competitive on any other market. Now, we are happy that the government has reduced its appetite on domestic borrowing. It has actually reduced from 5 trillion it had budgeted this year. Next financial year, they are for 1.5 trillion Ugandan shillings. We think that's a very good move that the government is making. Our prayer is that the appetite remains as low as it has projected, based on the fact that whether government will be able to attract more borrowing abroad, but not here. But there is another fundamental problem with our debt, and I think people need to understand that borrowing is not a bad idea. No. Every successful company has got debt on its books. Every government, very few governments on the planet Earth, the serious governments we talk about, have got debts on their books. In fact, United States, its debt to GDP is above 100%. For us, we are just at 53 and we are crying. But it is a matter of what you use that debt for. Any debt that brings better return is a good. Any loan that brings better return is a good loan.
That brings us the conversation of good debt versus bad debt.
So our challenge, biggest challenge, is that we have two problems. One is that our inability to spend the money we have borrowed, to the extent that we have borrowed money and we have not accessed it because we don't have capacity to use that money.
Inability to spend it, capacity to use that money, or misappropriation of that money?
Misappropriation comes later. You can only misappropriate money that you have actually that has come in. We have 15.5 trillion Ugandan shillings. We have borrowed, but we have not accessed because we are not prepared. I'll give an example. There is a Muzizi power plant. It's a project that was supposed to transmit power from a dam to the last consumer. When we started it, 2016, we could not do anything because we could not do a better feasibility study, we could not hire a very good contractor. 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 7 years down the road, we decided to cancel the contract because we kept on paying commitment fees. Because every loan you sign for and you have not utilized it, you pay a penalty for it. It's called commitment fees. And for the last 5 years, the Auditor General has said that we have spent 395 billion on that amount of money that is up there, which we committed to spend, and we are unable to spend it. So that's our biggest challenge on the loans that we borrow. The Kampala Jinja Express Highway, for example, it's an 895 billion loan from Africa Development Bank. Look at how bad that road is, Kampala Entebbe. We have not even done a single kilometer. The loan was signed 3 years ago, and we have failed totally. Sometimes you wonder who bewitched this country, but that's I'm trying to let you know our inability to spend money even when it is available. So that's our biggest challenge with
the same is also true with something like the project of to renovate the Uganda railways.
Uganda Railways is also there. In fact, it's so funny that the Spanish gave us money to rehabilitate our railway. We fulfilled all the conditions, all the paperwork are done, and they said, now you are ready, please request for the money. We could not request for money. Now we are going to cancel the loan because, again, the lack of preparedness. We don't invest in preparing ourselves to implement projects. You see, coming here, you've prepared on what you want to talk about. But if you just wake up in the morning and you just put here, start a show, definitely will go bad. So government needs to put in place a fund to prepare us to implement complex projects. If we don't do that, then we keep on paying losses, and we borrow more money, and then we don't utilize it. So we need to make sure that we spend on time, on the budget, but also on time. If you look at the Northern Bypass, for example, it was a 5-year project. It took 20 years for us to finish it. So project overruns were so many. So that is a fundamental problem with our debt. And I think if we can resolve that, let me tell you, we will not have any problem with us growing, having more incomes on people, because every project comes with tax.
But the question, again, like you're saying, there needs to be a lot of preparation and planning put into place for the implementation of these projects. But why isn't that being done? Why are we not learning from our lessons? You've given so many examples. Why is it that the government still continues to fail with these projects? Because, like you mentioned, we have debts to pay that are keeping Uganda in debt for 40 years. I mean, that is absurd. So how can the government get above this so that we can get to a point where the majority of the lion's share of the national budget is focused on implementing projects that are going to be important to the livelihoods of Ugandans?
So that is just not the debt, but even our own money. We have money that returns back to treasury. At the end of the financial year, you can't spend the money, it returns back to treasury. So we've been engaging government on the things it can do. But we have also realized that the things that it is supposed to do, it is finding it difficult to do it. I don't know why. There are simple things you need to do. If today you mismanage 2-3 talk shows here, your MOD will bring you up, question you, or probably fire you. It is extremely very difficult in this country to fire a driver or a teacher. Extremely very difficult. If a teacher has fired a kid, he has raped a kid, I'm telling you, getting a teacher fired, it is extremely very difficult. So if you can't fire a teacher, will you fire a commissioner?
Is that in the public sector or the private sector?
Public sector, I'm on public sector. Private sector does not tolerate this nonsense. It doesn't. Private sector, they have a bottom line, they must make profits. If you're a salesperson, you will not hit your target, you don't even need to be fired. You go home, you don't come back the next day. So in the government, we are lacking that kind of enthusiasm to target a business set of mind, that this is a project that must be executed on time and on budget. So we tend now to know, be a government, so you do them at your own leisure. If, for example, you are an accounting officer, you've been given a project to run for 3 years. It has not only gone beyond 3 years, it is in the 5th year, and it's at 20% performance. Why should we keep you as a government on a payroll? Why should we make you still an accounting officer? Even beyond, okay, you can go beyond the project lifeline, but when your performance is in 90s, you are remaining with a few things to finish. But if you go beyond the timeline, and you are below even 20% performance, for heaven's sake, you need to get fired. Now, that's where the politics now come in. You cannot touch our son. You cannot touch our daughter. Then everything now goes on. So now corruption gets into our project implementation. You can't believe that there are districts in this country that have returned back wage money. The government sends you say, we have 240 personnel. We intended to recruit 240. But you don't recruit because your daughters and sons have not finished their education. You are waiting for them to first finish, and then you get them on the payroll. So that wage money comes back to the treasury because you don't want to recruit. I specifically followed that up myself, and I found it was actually true that the districts actually don't want to recruit until their sons and daughters have finished school to come and take those particular positions. But also there is too much corruption in buying of jobs at the district level, and this thing has also come up, that before you get a job, you need to pay a certain amount of money. Now, government at central level, Minister of Finance has streamlined the payment of salaries and pensions to the extent that if your salary now comes straight from Minister of Finance to your account. There is no intermediary. So which means that if you get on the payroll, no any other person is going to start disturbing you that I'm not going to give you money before you pay me. So what happens is that you must pay upfront so that you get on the payroll.
The payroll.
And then money. Now, imagine you've not recruited a district engineer who is supposed to supervise your projects. So that project won't take place. It won't move on because you don't have a district engineer to sign your certificate of completion that a project has been finished and it requires payment. So that's the challenge now we face as a nation, that corruption is eating into project implementation and has resulted in all these things.
Indeed, and that's very deplorable. Now, according to the Ministry of Finance that you have just mentioned, the overall objective of the financial year 2023-2024 budget strategy is to restore the economy back to the medium-term growth path of about 6 to 7% and improve the economy's competitiveness. Now, you are talking about how this proposed budget is tackling the issues of prioritizing sectors like the education sector, the health sector, but I would also like, in addition, you to tell us your thoughts on what you think this proposed budget has to say in terms of things like tourism, because we are saying this is a big sector that can bring in a lot of revenue for the country.
So the projection of growth, 6-7%, it's achievable, but it has very strong assumptions. Number one of the assumption is that you must spend the money according to the priorities you have set. That's one. And number two is that you must implement the projects that you have put in the budget, because that's where growth is going to come from. And number three, that you must stop any leakages within the money system. Because if there is corruption, that means the money won't reach the intended beneficiaries. If those three conditions are achieved, I agree, we are going to have a 6-7% growth rate. But me and you, we know that those are our biggest weaknesses. Again, so I'm looking forward to see how government is going to address that. Look at the issue of the issue on the Mabati issue. What do we learn from it? What you learn from it is that you have a breakdown in public finance management practices. That if they were strong, iron sheets or any other government property would not end up in your compound. There would be a level of procedure from A to Z on how government property or government services are delivered to its people. But the people of Karamoja, these are their properties. There is that procedure, that there is no leakage. But if the property intended for Karamoja gets into government stores, and all of a sudden there are these holes that they go to Ruwero, they go to all the other places, it tells you that we have a breakdown in the public finance management system of the country. So, it is not just Mabati. How many things that government of Uganda deliver to its people? And that's where for us we really get worried. The Mabati is just a tip of an iceberg. So, in terms of priorities, what we are saying is, we look at tourism, for example, 124 billion. And we ask ourselves, could we do better than that? I think we can do better than that. I went to Tanzania one time, and I was informed that actually the government of Uganda is trying to put a crane to the tip top of Kilimanjaro. Remember, huge planes, 777, 777, land in Arusha, not in Dar es Salaam, just in Arusha, for people to go to check on the Serengeti and Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, government of Tanzania has realized that that is a cash cow. That's a cash cow. So they are going to invest that money to put a crane. How do they call them? So you don't need to walk up there.
Yes, you can just
jump on it, and the crane takes you up. You check Mount Kilimanjaro, you take photograph and selfies, and then you come down. Do we have plans for some of those in our tourist hotspots, for example? Do we have those kind of ideas? I'd say, because we know gorillas, the bigger percentage of the gorillas are in Uganda. But Rwanda sells better than gorillas than us. Why does that happen? Simply because somebody has realized that that is your low-hanging fruit. Invest in it. If you have a tourist expert to explain you how we generate money from this, it's incredible. Because when somebody comes to this country, at the airport, just entering like this, they start spending because they have no relatives. They start spending money on the taxi cab, reaching the hotel, they pay for the hotel bills. Remember, this hotel does not grow food. So imagine how many onions, tomatoes, carrots, cabbages, it doesn't grow food. Who supplies that? It is the people of Uganda. So just imagine, I mean, I have seen hotels when there is a workshop of 40 people, how much food they cook. And when there is no people, how much food they cook. So it's a transformative sector that I would really have loved the government to invest so heavily that everybody wants to come to the part of Africa. But if you want to go to our roads within the parks, we still have problems. Somebody has seen an elephant, he wants to take a selfie, there is no network to do that. You can't reach some spots simply because the network is so bad. But also is hospitality, ensure that we train the people. I was informed that if you find a Kenyan in a hotel, you have to sleep there because their customer care is just excellent. So we need to train our own people. So we need to see government to do some of those things because there is no private person who going to come and invest in a country where some of the basics are not there. So it is very little money. It is petty cash for tourism. And if government really wanted us to go to even beyond 7% growth to GDP, growth, we would have even tripled this amount of money.
Now, does that mean that government is prioritizing a miss? Now, one of the questions that the Ugandan people always have, yes, we appreciate the fact that we have peace and security to a large extent in this country. Some circles may disagree, but we see a lot of priority and emphasis put on the security sector as far as the national budget is concerned. Is this something that needs rethinking? Because, like you said, we have many sectors that need a lot of input: agriculture, tourism, health and education, amongst others.
So, we can disagree on whether we have peace or not. But I know I can't grow agriculture in Somalia. I can't go to Somalia and start agriculture or start serious business in Somalia. So those kind of instabilities definitely do not attract businesses. So in Uganda we are largely at peace. I think the question is at what cost? I think that's the question. Are we spending so much money for this? What is the cost of us to be a peaceful nation? I think that is the question that we all need to ask ourselves. When we see police investing so much in heavy gear, you know, it's like a battleground, you know. Could we have alternatives? For example, could we have alternatives? How can we make our country a place where divergent views can be listened to without being oppressed? Could it be cheaper for us to have that particular piece? I think for me that's the mindset I have. We need to invest in maintaining peace. But at what cost? What kind of investment do we put there? Instead of putting money in the heavy gear, for example, could we have national dialogues? Because managing a nation is not easy. People have their own sentiments. Can we have national dialogues and say, oh, you have a divergent view, this is the place to discuss it, without being harassed and tear gassed and beaten and thrown in prison, blah, blah, or that. So that is the concept I think we all need to understand. We know, but without that, then you are forced to invest heavily in these equipments. I can tell you, war is not a very cheap venture. It's not very cheap. Just by organizing your soldiers alone to say, here we are to guard this place, you just begin to imagine how much food they eat, the uniform we are going to provide. If it is all the bullets, because each bullet costs, and somebody has got a round of 300, 1,000 bullets. If you want to compute all that, war is never cheap. So you want to discuss and say, what are the alternatives of maintaining peace in this country? And I think me and you, that's probably beyond our pay grade. But what we need to understand is that there are areas we can reduce expenditure on. And there are things that we can do and get enough money. And I have mentioned, I said, there are things in this budget. If reduced, we can have fiscal space. Fiscal space means have more money around government. One of them is the cost of running this government. A colleague of mine yesterday was asking me, Julius, how many districts do we have? I have lost count. Guilty as charged. I don't know how many districts we have in this country. Simply because they are just too many. Some districts which I thought are counties and sub-counties, they are districts. So why don't we reduce on the number of districts? People think when you have a district, you are bringing services closer to people. That's absolutely not true. In fact, the little money that would have built an extra hospital is going to start up a new district. So districts are never a solution to service delivery. So let us reduce them. Let us bring them back to 50. I'm told they're 140 something. Bring them back. This business of dividing the country into sub-counties, parishes, and the municipalities and the cities, that does not help us. What an ordinary person needs is medicine in a health center, is a borehole that is functional. So reduce on the number of districts. reduce on a number of ministries and government agencies.
What can be prioritized better to ensure that there is service delivery to the Ugandan? And before the break, Mr. Julius Mukunda, who is the Executive Director of Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, was telling us that we can cut the expenditure to ensure that there's better service delivery. And something that you mentioned to me during the break, something startling, was the fact that if we wanted, we could cut the expenditure and have the budget at 20 trillion and use the rest to pay the debt, so that next financial year we don't have the debt. But you have mentioned that we have a lot in terms of expenditure when it comes to ministries and agencies. You spoke about the districts and the constituencies as well, which of course ties into the dreaded issue of how many MPs we have in Parliament right now.
Yes, and I mean, so we are saying, I mean, where can the money come from? You know, to where can we reduce? When you see what wastage expenditure, when you stop wastage, then you have enough resources to concentrate on what you want. So, and I think we were trying to remember how many districts have come out of Mbara district. So you have Isinjiro, you have Ibanda, you have Churura, you have Kazor, Yantonde, there is Kabura, and I think there are others. Now, despite creating all these districts, I don't know how many new hospitals have been built in these particular areas. How many schools have been built in these particular areas? Oh, we are forgetting that there is also Mbarara City. Isn't it? There is also Mbarara City. So reduce on the number of districts, you will save money. Reduce the number of government. Again, something I can confess to you. I don't know how many ministers we have. I've also lost count. Some I meet them, and you just don't know if this is the minister or not. Unless probably he puts on a siren and they are kicking you off the road with police. Then that's when you know, oh, this is a minister. So you reduce on the government, and so the operation of government becomes more. You reduce the depreciation. Then I will give you an example. The depreciation I mean, Uganda Public Service Commission recruits civil servants of Uganda. Uganda Health Service Commission recruits civil servants of Uganda, the teachers. Uganda Health Service Commission recruits civil servants of Uganda, the doctors. Uganda Judicial Service Commission recruits the civil servants of Uganda. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 agencies doing the same thing. So you ask yourself, couldn't Uganda Public Service Commission do this particular job? For heaven's sake, let's just go that simplicity. Let's say, oh, the judiciary needs, I don't know the complication that you want in terms of recruitment, but we know that Public Service Commission of Uganda can handle that. So you need, if you remove and create only one agency, let me tell you, services become smoother, but also we spend less on that. Now, there are so many agencies in the government of similar nature. In fact, the study we carried out, we found we can actually save $1 trillion if these agencies are amalgamated again. They are brought back.
Which is what they are intending to do, actually.
So we thought everybody would love that, and it picked storm. Everybody loved it. Yes, we're going to reduce expenditure. But now it has been turned political. And I think this is where the problem is. The country has been turned into a personal property. This is my agency, for example. And you wonder, when did a government property becomes a personal property? So you can't touch it. So you use the agency to manipulate information, to confuse everybody, and the roadmap for rationalization of agents is out there. It has not even been implemented. So we can do that and save. Lastly is the issue of the cost of government to run services. This pen, if you go on the open market, it is 1,000. Same manufacturer, same supplier. But this pen will go to different government departments, the ones I'm telling you about. it will be costing different prices. The same pen, same supplier, different prices to different government agencies. And yet, it is the same government, me and you, the taxpayers, who are going to pay for this particular pen. Because government does not have standards of what kind of pens it uses and the price that it will buy that particular pen. So everybody sets its own standard, but also its own price. That's why you go on the street, ministers drive completely different cars. Actually, one time I even saw Mercedes-Benz. I said, in this country, we also buy Mercedes-Benz for ministers, for heaven's sake. Different cars, different models, different prices. So if you are spending between 60 to 70% of your entire budget on procurement, just tell me how much money you are losing out of that. So once we do that, by setting a standard and a price list that the government of Uganda next financial year will buy pens at this, just go down, will buy sumbusa. Because you saw government agencies buy tea and nebegenderako. That sumbusa will be bought at this particular amount of money. I'm telling you, we can reduce our budget by almost a half in terms of procurement. So those are the wastages that you want to stop the hemorrhage, bring it back into the budget, to make sure that all boards are functioning and every child goes to school and we all get the medicine in the hospitals.
Now, as the civil society budget advocacy group, what would you like to see as far as the national budget for the 2023-2024 financial year before it is passed? What are the changes you'd like to see from that budget?
The changes, of course, is that if we were made to really redo this budget, we would make a serious surgery on it. First, of course, you pay off your debt. You don't want to be in the bad books with the debtors. You pay off your debt. But I think I will definitely do one, stop the leakages within the system, and be very serious. The law is very clear. If you are an accounting officer, you're not supposed to commit government if you don't have money in the budget. Stop domestic arrears. But you still go ahead and do that, you get fired immediately. All accounting officers with issues of that nature, they cannot be accounting officers in the next financial year. That one, you are going to remove incompetence and bring people who can be able to live on our work. That's number one. Number two is I would set a price list that I told you of government and set standard for government. That a primary school block of this size will cost government Uganda this amount of money. And that's it. Anybody who is bidding to build a school knows exactly what the government is doing. In fact, they will be even bidding at a lower price and even providing even better quality. That's how you win a bid. Cheap, at a low, not cheap, but low cost, but even better quality, because there are so many innovations that are out there at the moment. So you would definitely use that. There are a number of things that government has done which we like also, because government has cut expenditure, budget cuts in terms of workshops. Next financial year, ban on buying of vehicles. Next financial year, travel abroad has been banned, because that's where we waste a lot of money. So there are those measurements that have to take place. But I would put more money in agriculture. Not just agriculture, but specific things in agriculture. And those are two. Extension. Extension will be my number one priority. Why? Because PDM, the parish development model, 100% of the farmer, of the people who are going to receive that money, are going to put it in agriculture. So I would want them to have the right seeds, but also the right advice. The second thing in agriculture, I would put it in research, narrow, to make sure that the inputs that are disease and drought resistant are actually produced and given to farmers. I can tell you, if you go down street and you buy your seeds that say these are hybrid, you will be telling another story today. Yes. Those could be a few of the things that we can do. What time do we have?
Yes, but we have a minute or so. If you would like to also urge, what would you like the public, as far as, because this budget affects all of us, so what would you like to see the public as a stakeholder do as far as joining this conversation ahead of the passing of this budget?
No, for me, that's one of the best questions I usually want to receive. Because people tend to think that this budget is for them. It's never. It is for us. That borehole in your area, the president is never going to use it. Neither is the minister or your member of parliament. The borehole is for you. That school that has been built, that health center has been built, is for you. No minister is going to come to use that health center or that particular. His children or her children are not going to use that UPE school. It is up to us as citizens to follow the money. That school has been built and the money has been spent well. That we follow the money and the amount that has been executed. We have all those rights in our constitution to participate in the development process of our country. So please, PDM money, even if you don't want that money, be interested, because one of the things we have won with the government, which has accepted, is to publish all the beneficiaries of PDM money. Go in that list, see whether they are dead people that have received money, see whether they are non-residents in your area that have received money, and see whether actually who is supposed to receive money is actually has the criteria, has fulfilled the criteria of receiving that money, because that money is not for the rich. That money is for the poor. So if you have a very rich man in your area and has got PDM money, that's something you need to question. So let's all get involved in the budget process. I can tell you, if we all get involved, corruption will be very hard to sustain in this country.
Indeed. So it's upon us to join hands on fighting this corruption by joining in the process.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Julius Mukunda, for tackling this issue and for giving us insight into the national budget proposal as it stands when it comes to the 2023-2024 financial year. There you've had it, and you've been a part of this conversation. And in case you want to find out more about the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, how can we find out more about it?
No, you can find us on, we have a website, it's called csbag.org. You will find all the information, the researches we have carried out, simplified budget information. You can be able to find them. And we are situated in Ntinda, on plot 11, Vuja Close. If you come there, definitely you will be able to, we shall give you all the information you need. We have also Twitter at CSBAG Uganda. Facebook, I'm told it was banned in this country, but some people still use it. I don't know how they use it. But those are some of the areas you can find us, and we give you more information about it.
Indeed. So we have no excuse. The information is readily available. Thank you so much, our dear family members, for tuning in to Issues at Hand this morning. Yes, we want to be part of the process. You have no excuse. We can go and find out more about the budgetary process and how we can ensure that we are part of this conversation. And we will continue these conversations as Issues at Hand will return on Friday. But for now, it's ciao. Have a God-blessed day, and may the love of Christ be with you as you continue enjoying the programming here on Church of Uganda Family TV.